Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here with industry professionals who have just authored a very interesting book, Construction 4.0. We have Anil, Mike, and Javier, and we are going to be asking them a couple of questions. So, Anil, why don't we start with you? From your experience researching and consulting around the world, which construction trends have been working well for the industry and which have been holding it back?
Thank you very much, Arami. That's an excellent question for us to get started. As I said, I've worked in several countries in the construction sector, both as a consultant, as an academic. The opportunities seem to be same, and some of the issues that the sector faces are also same. So you can really look at it from either direction. You can look at it the issues or the challenges we face, or you can look at it from the dimension of the opportunities that the sector presents. So let me take the sort of the not so positive look first. We all know that the sector is our industry faces challenges with some issues relating to data and information sharing. We know there are challenges to things like inefficiencies related to rework. There are well-documented problems in time, cost, certainty in our delivery processes. So, and I've seen that across in India, in US, in Canada, Australia, UK, where I briefly worked, and those remain same. What I think on the flip side of that is now there are a lot of demand side pressures that our sector is facing. What I mean by that is, especially post-COVID, in this new era of construction and infrastructure, we are seeing demand by not only project sponsors, project owners, but as well as society in general to do things which are environmentally safe, that are just socially. So there are new sets of outcomes that the industry is now focusing on. For example, earlier when you asked about what you would you like to get out of your projects, people would generally talk about the time, cost, quality, scope, safety dimensions. But I think more and more we are talking now about social outcomes of our projects. We are talking about obviously sustainability and environmental outcomes, and how we can do projects, turn them into useful assets that serve our communities with least impact on environmental issues that we face. So I think what we are now seeing, especially on large and complex projects, is a shift towards outcomes and values-based thinking. And really, when that thinking comes into play, we need to then start shifting the very operating model of how we deliver projects. So I really convert that into three broad questions, which is what we tackle in our book as well. How do we change the way we design, construct, and fabricate? That's a fundamental question, number one. Question number two then is, how do we fundamentally change the way we procure and deliver? And number three is, how do we design, develop, and use digital tools in our industry? So there are three pillars that need to be simultaneously and concomitantly addressed in order to make the industry transform and reach that end state of providing the outcomes that the owners, sponsors, and society wants from our industry. So, and I call them the product or the physical transformation of how we produce. Is it still stick built is what we are going to do the production based on? Then are we going to still look at lowest bidders to select our performing agencies for our projects? So procurement or delivery transformation. And are we going to still think about individual digital tools and not think in terms of a digital platform or a digital ecosystem that can help us not only develop, design better digital tools, but show us how to use them in a better way? So those are my initial thoughts on that question that you had.
Thank you so much for your answers. That actually segues perfectly into Javier's question. Javier, your expertise in construction information technologies encompasses a wide breadth of applications. How have these technologies been applied in the past, and how can they be applied to existing buildings or much older properties?
So I guess there's quite a bit of different technologies that have been applied. And earlier in my construction career, way back when, started digital photography is an example. We use digital photography to record progress on projects and tie that to construction schedules in digital form. But now we've moved beyond those earlier technologies, and now we deal with things such as like virtual and augmented reality. Those type of technologies have also been used to monitor progress and compare actual versus plan in very interesting ways. Mobile devices have made that even easier now. Most of us carry a mobile phone a smartphone in our pocket, and those now have capabilities that were not thought of a few years back. Augmented reality is one that now with standard mobile phone, you can overlay progress with BIM models. You can also do LiDAR or laser scanning. That is something that we have been using in the industry to create digital models or versions of projects. And now with the phone, you can do something similar to a piece of equipment that was not very accessible to smaller construction companies. So now even the smaller companies can get into the digital transformation of the industry at a very low entry point. Then there's other things like these drones that we've been seeing so much about. First used by the military for other purposes, and now we have very good civilian applications, safety monitoring progress again, and we're even now experimenting with using these drones to find issues that are not apparent to the naked eye, like issues in pavement. And for applications that are as interesting as the ones that we're working on right now, dealing with evaluating the quality of the work of contractors in infrastructure work, and things as simple as mowing. We're looking at how a drone can be used to evaluate the performance of contractors that maintain our infrastructure in green spaces, which deals with the environmental implications of not having well-kept green spaces and all these things. So some of those have been applied, they're being developed, they're being applied in infrastructure in general, in buildings, and some of the most innovative or the latest ones that we're seeing are also included in the book. IoT, beyond visualization, but also sensors that collect information about buildings, and then the visualization of that information for building owners. So it's moving towards the creation of these digital twins. So there's a lot of technologies, and I can tell you a lot about them, but just to answer, I guess, wrap our answer to your question. So these technologies have to do with visualization, collecting information, and then allowing project participants to act on the information that has been collected.
Thank you, Javier. Definitely have been seeing drones being used a lot more in the construction industry. So that's been very exciting to see it happening in person. Mike, question for you. Technology has made a really big impact on how we sustainably design and construct the built environment. What innovation is in the pipeline to address the growing concerns of climate change and environmental stewardship?
Thank you, Rama. That's a really good question. And I think actually that Javier and Anil have touched on some of the things that I would mention as well. That to point to one single technology that is addressing this is really quite difficult because there are so many, and the book refers to a confluence of techniques and technologies and ideologies at the minute. And I think one of the things that I would say is that the issue around sustainability and climate change in response to that is more about connection of a series of ecosystems and a way of thinking than around any one particular technology. And when when Anil talked earlier on about fundamentally innovating the way that we design, construct and fabricate buildings, I think I would look at this whole issue of sustainability around 3 or 4 blocks of activity really. One is the way in which you manufacture buildings and the wish to minimize materials and to optimize construction forms. So minimize waste, optimize the nature of the materials that we use, genuinely select sustainable materials and renewables as far as we can possibly do that. Maximizing the efficiency of manufacture with lean techniques and informed techniques. And some of the stuff that Javier touched on there around IoT, I think connects into that really, really strongly. And then of course, there's the whole issue of trying to achieve performance in use that is net zero carbon. And that's really about optimizing the performance of buildings in use. So I suppose if I was to try and point to any single technology that links all of those things together, it would probably be to do with the advances in sensor technologies. You know, the way that we've moved to affordable production of sensors that can be utilized in all of the strands of this sort of equation that we just talked about, I think liberates our ability to take physical entities, put them into a virtual space and model and optimize them with a proper digital twin that allows us to address that appropriate selection of materials, minimization of materials wastage and optimization of manufacture, as well as optimized performance in use and minimization of energy consumption. So I suppose the thing that I would point to as a connecting technology would be that one of affordable mass-produced sensors, which is now becoming pretty much the norm in lots of sectors of industry. Probably is slower to be integrated into construction and construction manufacturers we know it now.
Thank you. Now we are going to be moving on to questions about Construction 4.0 and delving a little bit deeper into the work that you've done and what it means for the general public as we go through these next couple of years. So the construction industry has been long and reluctant to embrace change, let alone technology. Considering the conservative nature of this sector, why is digitization the next logical step? And more importantly, how long will it take to implement?
Maybe I can take a first stab at that. So I think it's an excellent question. We as a sector are often criticized as not embracing technology. In fact, I organized a panel a few years ago where one of the speakers who had joined the construction sector from another domain, so an outsider to the construction sector. And the first comment they made was that construction sector takes on technology as a bitter pill. It's literally, we always question which may be the right approach, but I think some of that needs to go away. And now it was already changing. We were embracing technology as a sector much more rapidly than before. Then came this new global health, economic, social challenge in 2020. That became really an accelerant towards adoption of technology. So I think the worldview is changing now. But again, our sector is so complex and varied that you have large companies, you have very small organizations, you have large projects, we have very small projects. So it's very difficult to generalize, but I think the general inertia and momentum has now shifted towards more broadly engaging with technology. We have already seen excellent applications and good results of using technology on site. For example, wearable sensors, use of digital twins, and all other nice things that we have. I think what we really need to focus on, and to address perhaps the previous question about sustainability as well, is to understand that we need to start thinking about integrating vertically, horizontally, and longitudinally. So we need to think in terms of integrating across our project teams. There is, I think, enough fragmentation when it comes to various specializations within the value chain. Similarly, we need to think about integrating across the life cycle of the project. I know, Arami, that you're more into real estate sector, but I think somebody said that the data about an asset from a project to an asset, 70% of the data is actually generated during the operation stage of that asset. We're not good at taking that data, converting that into insights and wisdom, and pulling it back into our design and construction processes. So we need to start thinking about integrating those life cycle steps as well. And then longitudinally, we need to start thinking about learning from projects, one project to the next. We should not be repeating same mistakes on our next project, so that longitudinal integration in terms of learning and knowledge and wisdom also needs to take place. So overall, I think that then brings us to this important question about data. This integration longitudinally, horizontally, vertically is really possible if we start thinking about the golden thread of data. We need to start as a sector thinking about data enriched projects that turn into data enriched assets. And I think that fundamentally can address all these dimensions of cost certainty, time certainty, sustainability, circular economy, better use of digital tools, and appropriate use of construction technologies and materials as well. So I think broadly, I'm seeing shift towards embracing technologies than before, especially given what we are facing today in terms of challenges. And also, I think more importantly, the concept of digital transformation has taken some significant hold within the sector. Small, medium, large organizations are thinking about doing business slightly differently.
I wonder if I might just sort of add to what Anil said there. I would fully endorse and echo everything Anil's just said, but with specific reference to the issue of construction and digitization and why it would be the next logical step. I think for me, there is a question which is asked, which is how can it possibly not be the next logical step? If you look at the consequence of the pandemic, in the first 3 months or so of the pandemic, there was a 60% increase in internet traffic over that period globally, and 120% increase in video conferencing or video communication traffic. And by 2023, it's forecasted $6.8 trillion will have been spent digitizing industry, and 65% of global GDP will be digitized in some form or another. So although construction might have been slightly slower to the party than some other sectors, I think there is a genuine kind of mass movement and mass migration towards it now, and a much greater awareness that actually it's no longer a choice of opting in, it's a choice of when rather than if. And so we, I think, also have quite a strong agenda as educators to make sure that people going through the educational system into construction sector and design sector carry with them the skills, the ideologies, the concepts that we're trying to put forth in the book, so that actually they become change agents and assist with that whole process.
Yeah, that's what I was going to comment on, being at the ground level of the education system and preparing the next generation of professionals. We have seen that adoption, that resistance of adoption of technologies from the industry, but also how the interest of the students that are in our system, educational system, and they're hoping to get to the industry, how they're going to be taking what they're learning from our courses and the experience that they have using these technologies, and then being the ones that promote the use of the technologies. in their future employment, future companies that they're going to be working in. And there's also another aspect to that. There's a lot of entrepreneurship mindset that is being embedded into the education of many of these young professionals. And I've seen where the universities are starting these or have these technology incubators where students can present their ideas, receive a small amount of seed capital that they can use to develop these new ideas and products that then will be used and adopted by the industry. So there's a lot going on in the educational arena and the preparation of these future professionals, and that's one of the things that we're doing with the book. Our university has adopted it, and like Anil said, other universities have adopted the book as well, and we hope that folks would get the benefit of establishing this vision that students can adopt the technologies or learn about the technologies, and then being able to promote their adoption in their careers.
I will say that Construction 4.0 is very much forward-looking, and your points of student entrepreneurship and adopting new technologies, especially with a generational focus of digitizing information, is really well put. I'm going to skip around on the questions because I think it's kind of prevalent. We touched up on it a little bit, this golden thread of data and fragmentation. Your textbook does mention that longitudinal fragmentation is one of the culprits of project inefficiencies. Just out of interest, is it primarily driven by the project team miscommunication? And will digitizing the knowledge and resources help alleviate the issue? Or is there a different use that digitizing will have?
I think your question itself framed it so well that it captures part of the answer. And what we were hinting as well is, again, capturing all of that knowledge that you gain and then transferring it longitudinally to your next project, So obviously, I think data converted into information, converted into knowledge and wisdom is how that cycle will take place. And so therefore, data is going to play a very crucial role. The challenge we face is not only project teams, but sometimes data is sitting behind commercial boundaries or contractual boundaries. So I have the data, but I don't want to share it with you because of the contract that is in place. So there is a difference between proprietary data, confidential data, private data, and all that. But there must be a way for us to figure out how to make that data the golden thread through the delivery process, which then can lead to gaining knowledge and wisdom that we can use to drive our next design, our next construction, our next delivery process on the next project. So yes, there are challenges, but I think thinking about data more carefully and more clearly is important. We have used data all the time. It's nothing new. All projects are built because we have data. It's just a matter how fragmented that data is. Which contractual boundaries does that data sit behind? Will I be willing to share my cost data with another entity if I'm a subcontractor? All those questions, including the question of a standard like a data standard, are crucial to be answered in order to push us towards a data-driven and a model-centric way of operating. And that's what we do in Construction 4.0. And I'll share with you a definition later in one of the questions when we talk about digital twins or cyber physical systems. That is what we are thinking when we think about Construction 4.0.
You actually touched up on one of the terms, cyber physical systems. You mentioned this and digital ecosystems in Construction 4.0. Can you elaborate a little bit more about them, specifically why they are important to incorporate in the project workflow?
Sure. So let me begin by sort of sharing with you a definition that Mike, Javier, and I have sort of worked up on Construction 4.0. It's a definition that is still being formulated, but it tells you the intent. So we define Construction 4.0 as a paradigm. So it's not a tool, it's not a technology, it's more than that, it is a paradigm that uses two key pillars. One is cyber physical systems, and the second one is Internet of Things, data and services, so the digital layer. So it helps, the paradigm helps link the digital layer that may consist of a building information model and a common data environment with the physical layer, which will consist of the asset over its whole life to create an interconnected environment integrating organizations, processes, and information to efficiently design, construct, and operate assets. So, sort of that's our working definition of what is 4.0. It's a paradigm sitting on cyber physical systems and Internet of Things, data, and services that helps connect the digital and the physical layer over the whole life, but really then provides us with an interconnected environment integrating organizations, processes, and information. And then ultimately helps improve the way we deliver projects, operate them, and manage them. So, having said that, we feel that cyber physical systems or digital twins, as it's popularly known in the industry, is going to play a crucial role. BIM models have existed for a long time successfully. Assets have existed for a long, long time separately. What brings them together is this physical digital loop, also called the cyber physical system. So you have a data enriched BIM model that is bi-directionally connected to your physical asset. And we are proposing that that process starts in the construction stage itself. Most people think of a cyber physical system or digital twin during the operation, maintenance, renewal, and end of life phase of an asset. We think there is importance even during the construction stage. So as you're building a high fidelity data enriched BIM model, you connect that with the asset under construction through sensors, through other devices that helps you gather real-time information about the asset and bring it back into the BIM model. But since it's bidirectional, you should be able to take that data, that edge information that you're collecting from your sensors about the asset, and then make decisions. And I think Mike and Javier both pointed out about the visualization of that data and that information. So then we as humans or project managers on those projects can make decisions. And because of the bidirectional nature of the physical and digital connection, you can effect a change in the asset. For example, you could move a window shade. So that connection, which is both gathering information, but then having a physical intervention in your asset, makes it into a cyber physical system or a digital twin. We feel that the benefit really stems from starting to think and develop a digital twin or a cyber physical system during the construction stage, rather than doing a laser scan of an already existing asset and then converting that into a digital twin. We can start thinking about a digital twin from the construction step itself. So that's sort of loosely the definition of construction 4.0, as well as digital twins and cyber physical systems. So simultaneous sitting with that is a platform of digital tools. And today you will see in our industry, there are digital platforms or ecosystems that have already come up where you have a large software houses that have allowed the use of their core authoring tools using APIs and SDKs that other software developers, hardware developers can sit on top of that layer and carve out real products that can be used by the end users, very much similar to the iOS ecosystem where you can have a hardware producer come up with a little hardware for EKG or for your heart measurements, connect it to the phone, and provide this value-adding, customer-focused, individual-focused digital tool. I think we can take that same approach and apply it in our industry as well, where there is a platform upon which you can build maybe a health and safety app which connects to sensors on sites and ensures the current health and safety guidelines post-COVID or during this COVID times. So I think simultaneous to digital twins, we feel innovation in digital ecosystems and platforms will benefit our sector as well. So that's what we mean in this book. What is Construction 4.0? What are cyber physical systems, and what is a digital ecosystem?
Thank you so much for your answer. It was incredibly insightful. And realizing after some of your answers that a lot of this, albeit is very construction focused, there are other stakeholders in the AEC industry, primarily architects. And in terms of what you have echoed in your book, how does this, how can architects really take this and apply it to their day-to-day work? Mostly because, you know, as construction is one aspect, design is the other, and we are anticipating most likely market change for these materials. So first question would be, how will architects be able to take this information and integrate it into their designs? And then how do you anticipate the market for materials and supply chains to look like in the future as a result?
If I may jump in and share some ideas on that or some insights. So architects play an essential role not only on the design phase, but also on the construction phase. And I say that because if the architect provides a digital version of that design, that allows the contractor, if you will, to evaluate constructability of that design. And if there's a collaborative relationship between the two, that design can be modified almost in real time with no significant effort, since it's a digital version. Then also with other stakeholders like the owner, for example, these digital tools like virtual reality can be used to allow the owner to experience that design before it becomes real. So I've seen where these design coordination efforts have been heavily influenced by this virtual reality technology. And on the part of the procurement, there are other tools that have been integrated with these digital designs that allow the architect, contractor, owner to evaluate the sourcing of materials, like the supply chain. There's geographic information systems that can be combined with these digital twins, where you can evaluate what is the distance of suppliers or for the different materials and components, and see what would be the carbon footprint of any component in the building that has to be procured, manufactured, transported from any distance. And the last thing I'll say with the sustainability part is that there's also the opportunity to evaluate the use of modular construction, manufactured construction, prefabrication, and seeing where are the best places to have these needed facilities to do off-site construction and optimize their location so they have the least impact on the environment. So those are just some I guess ideas on that.
Mike, is there anything you'd like to add? I have three things that I'd like to add.
Sorry, I was struggling to unmute my microphone, and I'll go. Okay, sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. I'm awfully sorry. I would echo everything that Javier said and everything that Anil said, but that particular question about architects and how they can utilize this, I think links in very, very strongly to the discussion that we just had about longitudinal fragmentation, because for as long as we look at a building project, let's call it an asset creation project, as being a phase which is inception, a phase which is design, a phase which is construction, and a phase which is operation, we will have these bits of fragmentation as we go through. And I think that particularly in the UK, I know globally it's more the case as well now, what we're seeing is actually the design construction element of this whole thing being much more conjoined with design and build and contract-driven design, informed by all of the sort of technologies and techniques that we've spoken about now. But I think that one of the other things that we're seeing is a kind of reasonably rapid increase in the use of open source design material and parametric modeling that's open source. So I think that there's the ability to share and benefit from sharing through the design process, and probably to see the process of bringing a project into being less as a series of stages and more as a continuum on which, as an individual player, you pitch your tent on a certain part of that continuum at any place and time. So I think that would be something that I would very, very much support and endorse. Sorry, Anil, I think I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. So what I would say is three things. One, I think we all, not just the architects, and architects probably already do this, need to think of a whole of life and whole of asset worldview. So when designing, if you consider a whole of life of that asset, I think we'll have a better outcomes. But then the counter question would be, is there an incentive in our procurement systems that gives you that freedom to have a whole of life or whole of asset worldview? But that's a separate thing. But as an architect, if you start thinking whole of life, whole of asset, I think there will be improvements in the design process itself. The second thing I would say is, and I put that in a slide normally, that each actor in this value chain, the owner, sponsor, designer, engineer, constructor, asset manager, needs to think. So if I'm a constructor, I need to think from a lens of design. I need to think from the lenses of asset management. Similarly, as a designer or an architect, if you can take on the lenses of a constructor and an asset owner and asset manager, I think designs can be further enhanced. Lastly, I think the third point I would like to make is again about data. And I think there is a lot of work that already happens that is evidence-based, that is data-based within design. But more and more, if we can feed back from what we learn from running assets, bring that data into, convert them into knowledge and evidence, and improve our designs and loop that back in, that will help in a significant way also. And so within all of these 3 points, I think there is one common element, which is we slowly need to start thinking more about productization as well. And that's what Construction 4.0 promotes in terms of industrialized construction. Rather than thinking sticks and bricks, we need to think about product platforms that can work across projects. As Mike said, when we start thinking about a project, we just think about that project. Whereas we need to think of a family of products that can fit into all projects that we would be doing in that category. So a productization worldview, a product-based approach, and perhaps design for manufacture and assembly, DFMA, can also be brought into when architects design new structures.
Thank you. We are getting close to time, so we have one last question, and I think this will tie in perfectly with everything that has been discussed. So with taking the idea of productization, the importance of location and open source design materials, and really putting that together in the whole of life and then the whole of asset, as you said. We at ACE Lab have been trying to really streamline the selection of material the process of material selection and what products really go into the building. And just in general, this isn't only specific to architects. As you mentioned before, there's a whole slew of individuals who are involved, from the owner and the contractor. So with that said, moving forward, what can architects and builders in general look for when selecting and installing the building materials, and just specifically to integrate them into the new digital processes, but also to take into consideration what it means to apply them to the concept of productization?
I can go first. If Mike, do you want to go first? Go ahead.
Well, I was really just going to reiterate a point that we've made a few times through the discussion this afternoon, and that is that I think if you're seeking to streamline and optimize the selection of materials for a particular project, I think you have to break out of that mold of looking at it as a single project with a single defined scale, and look at the whole sort of cradle to cradle life duration of a project and its linkage to other projects. Because I think there is a tendency, perhaps historically, for architects and constructors to select the material that's fit for purpose to build the building easily or quickly or in an energy efficient way, or to enhance its durability, or to enhance its recyclability in response to sustainability and resilience. But actually, you need to tie all of those things together and have a really, really well-informed view. And the data point that Anil made earlier on about building a compendium of data and having a really, really advanced and robust lexicon of data around these things that can be shared freely, I think is probably key to that for me. And as with many things that we've talked about today, I think a lot of these things we've framed in the sort of the Construction 4.0 framework and the paradigm that Anil's talked about, but a lot of them link to cultures in our industry and cultures in our behaviours about how we work together and how we work for the best benefit of all the stakeholders involved, with single source of truth for data.
So I think Mike has summarized that very well. I have looked at Rami and Vardhan, what you guys do at ACE Lab briefly. I think that is really the right approach. As you know, there is an international effort now to come up with an ISO standard. In fact, it's already released last year, called product data templates. Okay, so essentially, as Mike was saying, we need to have a standardized template upon which all the data can be brought together. We are never going to be able to come to a situation where every stakeholder, project team member is going to use the same design authoring or project management tool. Different people will use different tools. What is common is really data. So if, for example, for all our objects in the design, construction, operation stages of a project can have a standardized data template, and that data template brings together all your environmental information, so carbon reporting information, all the tests that have been performed for safety, all building code, building regulation information, dimensional information, geometric information, supply chain information. If it can be structured in a very systematic fashion, and that is what these product data templates do, the ISO standard, I think it will take our industry into the right direction, where if literally you can drag and drop a product or a BIM object or a construction object into your design, alongside that comes all the information that you would need in how it will get constructed, what are the sustainability implications, what are the life cycle cost implications, what are the tests that have been performed and all the approvals for regulation, building control purposes, Is it safe? Is it going to have the quality and the life expectancy that we want? So that product data template streamlines how all that disparate information comes or data comes together. And I think that would be what will drive the next productization wave in our sector. So tools like yourself, I think, take that significant step in the right direction, where a repository of that object information is available to the designers, constructors, and vendors and suppliers in a systematic fashion and can be used during the life of the asset.
If I may add one thought on that, would be that you will have the information and you will know all the different parameters and impacts of the products that go into the design. But then the issue could be the large amount of information that has to be considered to find an optimal solution. And there are tools that are being developed for other applications that help with decision making, like algorithmic artificial intelligence that can go through large amounts of data, and based on the requirement or the interest of the owner or whoever is producing the design, can optimize the various parameters, whether it be cost or the time that it would take to install based on how far the product has to travel, or the environmental implications. I'm assuming everybody wants the best environmental outcome. But then how is that going to affect the options for schedule and cost, which owners and the contractors will be concerned. And lastly, the maintainability of the asset once it's finished. What are the implications for facility management of that asset? So all these things, there's these technologies that are more decision-making aids that can contribute to that.
Well, I will just say that your commentary and feedback is greatly appreciated. This is a lot of very invaluable information to take back, and we are excited in general for the work we're doing, but also incredibly thankful for the work you have done. All of you writing this book has not just touch up on the paradigm shift, but also really reinforce the feedback loop of information, both digital and people-based. So thank you so much. Very excited to see what the future holds. Seems like it might be coming a little bit sooner rather than later, which we're all thankful for. And with that said, if there is any other questions or comments, I think that's a wrap.
Thank you.